Welcome to this explainer. You know, football is universally described as a young man's game. It demands incredible speed, just endless energy, and absolute peak athleticism. Because of the grueling physical toll it takes on the body, most players hit their absolute prime in their 20s. By the time they hit their 30s, well, a lot of them are already looking toward retirement. The conventional wisdom is that by your late 30s, a football career on the world stage is, frankly, long over. The body just simply can't keep up. But today we're diving into the story of a man who looked at every single one of those rules and completely ignored them. A man who authored one of the most cinematic, unbelievable underdog stories in all of sports history. 38. I really want you to keep this number in the back of your mind. In the summer of 1990, when the World Cup kicked off in Italy, 38 was the age of Roger Milla. Now, some people believed he was way too old to even be there. Others figured whatever best years he had were firmly in the rearview mirror. Yet, at an age when most professional careers are just a distant memory, Roger Milla stepped onto the world's biggest stage and completely shocked the globe.
So to really appreciate this, we need to understand just how unlikely his presence even was. Long before 1990, Milla was already an absolute legend in African football. He had this incredible talent that took him to France, playing for clubs like Monaco, Bastia, Saint-Étienne, and Montpellier. He won trophies and earned immense admiration over there. But back then, African football didn't get a ton of global attention, meaning to the wider world he was largely an unknown. And by 1988, Milla actually believed his international career was well and truly finished. He officially retired from the Cameroon national team. His farewell seemed totally complete as he approached the age of 40. But then, as that 1990 World Cup drew closer, the pressure started to mount. Supporters were begging him to come back. Officials wanted him back. The push was literally so strong that even the president of Cameroon called him to encourage a comeback. I mean, you don't just say no to that, right? So eventually, Milla agreed to pack his bags for Italy. And honestly, very few people could have predicted what that single decision was about to trigger.
Section 1. Shocking the Champions. The impossible Italian 90 opener.
The stage was beautifully set for something completely impossible. The sheer scale of this mismatch was just staggering. Cameroon entered the tournament as massive, unheralded outsiders. All the global predictions were totally focused on the heavyweights, teams like West Germany, Italy, Brazil, and of course Argentina. So Cameroon's opening match seemed like a cruel joke. They had to face the defending world champions, Argentina, who were led by none other than the legendary Diego Maradona. The entire world anticipated a total blowout. No one, and I mean no one, expected a real contest. Cameroon was completely written off before a single ball was kicked.
But instead of a blowout, Cameroon pulled off one of the greatest shocks in the history of the World Cup. Francois Omam scored, and then the team defended with this unbelievable heroic desperation. The final whistle blew and Argentina had actually lost. The mighty defending champions had fallen to the unknown outsiders. Just like that, the entire globe was suddenly forced to pay attention to Cameroon, proudly known as the Indomitable Lions. Which brings us to our next chapter. The super sub strikes. A secret weapon is unleashed.
With the whole world now watching, Cameroon unleashed their secret weapon. You see, despite his legendary reputation back home in Africa, Milla actually didn't start the tournament as a regular in the lineup. Remember, he's 38. Instead, he was deployed tactically as a super sub. The strategy was brilliant. Wait until the opponents were totally exhausted, and then bring Milla on. He was fresh, he was dangerous, and he was completely fearless. Against Romania, this tactic literally changed everything. He comes off the bench and scores once. Then he scores again. Cameroon wins. This 38-year-old veteran was shattering expectations with absolutely every touch of the ball. This unbelievable momentum set up a brutally tense round of 16 clash with a really talented South American side, Colombia. The match was agonizingly tight, and it actually remained scoreless all the way through regular time.
So extra time arrives and the tension is literally suffocating. Then Milla strikes, scoring a crucial goal to give Cameroon the lead. But what happened next? Well, it became one of the most famous sequences in World Cup history. It all unfolded in a matter of thrilling seconds. The Colombian goalkeeper, René Higuita, who was famous for taking massive, crazy risks, ventured dangerously far out of his goal box. Milla instantly saw his chance. He pressured the keeper, stole the ball right off him, raced toward the wide-open net, and scored again. Cameroon wins. For the very first time in history, an African nation had made it to a World Cup quarterfinal, and standing right at the dead center of this spectacular narrative was Roger Milla. But it wasn't just the goals that made him a legend. It was how he celebrated them. After scoring, Milla didn't just cheer or pump his fist. No, he ran straight over to the corner flag and he danced. The movement was so joyful, so relaxed, and just entirely unique. Television audiences worldwide absolutely fell in love with it. Supporters copied it in the stands, children everywhere imitated it in the streets. This celebration became instantly iconic because it represented something much, much larger than just a game of football. It was a beautiful symbol of supreme confidence, of pure joy, and of African football expressing its immense pride right there on the world's biggest stage. Even decades later, people remember that corner flag dance just as vividly as the goals themselves.
Moving forward to one match from history, the quarterfinal versus England. At this point, Cameroon was flying incredibly high, but standing directly between them and the semifinals was England. No African nation had ever gone that far before. The dream seemed totally impossible, but then it almost happened. Cameroon fought brilliantly. At one stage during this nail-biter of a match, they actually held the lead. The entire football world was watching in absolute disbelief, seriously wondering if Cameroon could genuinely reach the last four. Eventually, though, England managed to recover, and the match finished 3-2 after extra time. The dream of the semifinals ended right there. Yet, this defeat felt entirely different. Cameroon hadn't failed, not at all. They had fundamentally changed global perceptions forever. They proved without a shadow of a doubt that African football absolutely belonged right there among the world's elite. By the end of Italia '90, Roger Milla was a bona fide global superstar. His smile and his goals inspired millions, and across Africa, kids were dreaming of following in his exact footsteps. Now, most stories, even the really great ones, would end right here. But Roger Milla's story? It wasn't over.
Let's look at his final chapter, an unmatched global legacy. The old man returns again.
4 years later, he returned. It was the 1994 World Cup in the United States. Now, Milla was 42 years old. 42! Surely everyone thought this time the story is over for good. The magic has to have run out by now.
But the old man had one more impossible feat left in him. Because, yet again, Milla scored. At exactly 42 years and 39 days old, he became the oldest goal scorer in World Cup history. It's a record that stands as a massive testament to sheer defiance. And what's truly mind-blowing is that this record still stands today. Decades later, the veteran achieved the impossible one last time.
World Cups create champions and legends all the time, right? But Roger Milla became something entirely different. He became a symbol, a universal symbol of perseverance, of pure joy, belief, and possibility. Most football stories, they celebrate youth and the heavy favorites. Milla's stories celebrated experience and the ultimate outsider. He showed us all that football's greatest moments often come from the absolute least expected places, and that greatness definitely doesn't always belong to the young. As the quote perfectly captures, sometimes greatness belongs to the dreamers who refuse to stop believing.
And this brings us to a final, really powerful thought. Roger Milla was told repeatedly that he was too old, that his time had completely passed, that his team had zero chance against the world's giants. He ignored absolutely all of it. And by doing so, he changed the world's perception of an entire continent's footballing ability forever. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really think about. If a retired 38-year-old can return to the biggest stage on Earth and completely shock the world, what arbitrary limits are you accepting in your own life? Thank you so much for joining us for this story, and whatever you do, keep challenging the impossible.